We are all in this together. We ought to love one another, because united teams win and divided teams lose. And if we can't love one another, we ought to get along with one another. And if you can't get there, just recognize we're all stuck with one another because nobody's going anywhere, right? Now, that ought to get everybody back up to let's get along together and make it work. Our diversity is a strength. We've turned it into a weakness. Now, again, the White House is a bully pulpit. I think whoever's in the White House should just make it absolutely unconscionable and inexcusable. And if anybody's in the middle of a speech at one of these conventions, I would expect the candidate to go out and lift him off the stage if he starts preaching hate, because we don't have time for it. See, our differences are our strengths. We have got to pull together. In athletics, we know it. See, divided teams lose, united teams win. We have got to unite and pull together, and there's nothing we can't do. But if we sit around blowing all this energy out the window on racial strife and hatred, we are stuck with a sure loser, because we have been a melting pot. We're becoming more and more of a melting pot. Let's make it a strength, not a weakness.
Governor Clinton, 1 minute.
I grew up in the segregated South, thankfully raised by a grandfather with almost no formal education, but with a heart of gold, who taught me early that all people were equal in the eyes of God. I saw the winds of hatred divide people and keep the people of my state poorer than they would have been spiritually and economically. And I've done everything I could in my public life to overcome racial divisions. We don't have a person to waste in this country. We are being murdered economically because we have too many dropouts, we have too many low birth weight babies, we have too many drug addicts as kids, we have too much violence, we are too divided by race, by income, by region. And I have devoted a major portion of this campaign to going across this country and looking for opportunities to go to white groups and African American groups and Latino groups and Asian American groups and say the same thing. If the American people cannot be brought together, we can't turn this country around. If we can come together, nothing can stop us.
Mr. President, 1 minute.
Well, I think Governor Clinton is committed. I do think it's fair to note, he can rebut it, that Arkansas is one of the few states that doesn't have any civil rights legislation. I've tried to use the White House as the bully pulpit, speaking out against discrimination. We passed 2 very forward-looking civil rights bills. It's not going to be all done by legislation, but I do think that you need to make an appeal every time you can to eliminate racial divisions and discrimination. And I'll keep on doing that and pointing to some legislative accomplishment to back it out. I have to take 10 seconds here at the end, the red light isn't on yet, to say to Ross Perot, please don't say to the DEA agents on the street that we don't have the will to fight drugs. Please, I have watched these people, the same for our local law enforcement people. We're backing up every way we possibly can, but maybe you meant that some in the country don't have the will to fight it, but those that are out there on the front line, as you know, you've been a strong backer of law enforcement. Really, I just want to clear that up, have the will to fight it, and frankly, some of them are giving their lives.
Time, Mr. President. All right, let's go now to another subject, the subject of health. The first question for 2 minutes is to President Bush, and John will ask it.
Mr. President, yesterday, tens of thousands of people paraded past the White House to demonstrate their concern about the disease AIDS. A celebrated member of your commission, Magic Johnson, quit, saying that there was too much inaction. Where is this widespread feeling coming from that your administration is not doing enough about AIDS?
Coming from the political process. We have increased funding for AIDS, we've doubled it on research and on every other aspect of it. My request for this year was $4.9 billion for AIDS, 10 times as much per AIDS victim as per cancer victim. I think that we're showing the proper compassion and concern. So I can't tell you where it's coming from, but I am very much concerned about AIDS, And I believe that we've got the best researchers in the world out there at NIH working the problem. We're funding them. I wish there was more money, but we're funding them far more than any time in the past, and we're going to keep on doing that. I don't know, I was a little disappointed in Magic because he came to me and I said, now if you see something we're not doing, get a hold of me, call me, let me know. He went to one meeting, and then we heard that he was stepping down, so he's been replaced by Mary Fisher, who electrified the Republican convention by talking about the compassion and the concern that we feel. It was a beautiful moment, and I think she'll do a first-class job on that commission. So I think the appeal is, yes, we care. And the other thing is, part of AIDS, it's one of the few diseases where behavior matters. And I once called on somebody, well, change your behavior. If the behavior you're using prone to cause AIDS, change the behavior. Next thing I know, one of these ACT UP groups is out saying Bush ought to change his behavior. You can't talk about it rationally. The extremes are hurting the AIDS cause. To go into a Catholic Mass in a beautiful cathedral in New York under the cause of helping in AIDS and start throwing condoms around in the Mass, I'm sorry, I think it sets back the cause. We cannot move to the extreme. We've got to care. We've got to continue everything we can at the federal and the local level. Barbara, I think, is doing a superb job in destroying the myth about AIDS. And all of us are in this fight together. All of us care. Do not go to the extreme.
One minute, Mr. Perot.
First, I think Mary Fisher was a great choice. We're lucky to have her heading the commission. Secondly, I think one thing that if I were sent to do the job, I would sit down with FDA, look exactly where we are. Then I would really focus on, let's get these things out. If you're going to die, you don't have to go through this 10-year cycle that FDA goes through on new drugs. Believe me, people with AIDS are more than willing to take that risk. And we could be moving out to the human population a whole lot faster than we are on some of these new drugs. So I think we can expedite the problem there. Let me go back a minute to racial divisiveness. All-time low in our country was the Judge Thomas Anita Hill hearings, and those senators ought to be hanging their heads in shame for what they did there. Second thing, not many times in your life when you get to talk to the whole country, but let me just say this to all of America. If you hate people, I don't want your vote. That's how strongly I feel about it.
Governor Clinton, 1 minute.
Over 150,000 Americans have died of AIDS. Well over 1.25 million Americans are HIV positive. We need to put one person in charge of the battle against AIDS to cut across all the agencies that deal with it. We need to accelerate the drug approval process. We need to fully fund the act named for that wonderful boy, Ryan White, to make sure we're doing everything we can on research and treatment. And the president should lead a national effort to change behavior, to keep our children alive in the schools, responsible behavior, to keep people alive. This is a matter of life and death. I've worked in my state to reduce teen pregnancy and illness among children, and I know it's tough. The reason Magic Johnson resigned from the AIDS Commission is because the statement you heard tonight from Mr. Bush is the longest and best statement he's made about it in public. And I'm proud of what we did at the Democratic Convention, putting 2 HIV positive people on the platform, and I'm proud of the leadership that I'm going to bring to this country in dealing with the AIDS crisis.
New question for Mr. Perot. You have 2 minutes to answer, and Ann will ask it.
Mr. Perot, even if you've got what people say are the guts to take on changes in the most popular, the most sacred of the entitlements, Medicare, people say you haven't a prayer of actually getting anything passed in Washington. Since a president isn't a lone ranger, how in the world can you make some of those unpopular changes?
2 ways. Number one, if I get there, it will be a very unusual and historical event because the people, not the special interests, put me there. I will have a unique mandate. I have said again and again, and this really upsets the establishment in Washington, that we're going to inform the people in detail on the issues through an electronic town hall so that